Zimbabwe's central bank has agreed to overhaul a weekly foreign exchange auction to address instability in the local currency market and help tame high inflation. Business leaders urged the central bank in a meeting on January the 21st to refine its auction system introduced in June 2020. The system allocates US dollars to firms and provides an official exchange rate between the Zimbabwean dollar and the greenback. Since late 2021, the central bank has struggled to meet demand, resulting in a backlog of payments. The Zimbabwean dollar has plunged, fanning inflation that has accelerated to more than 60%. According to ZimPriceCheck.com, a website that monitors officials and unofficial exchange rates, the local currency officially trades at 112.80 to a dollar and trades more than twice that on the parallel market. The Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe agreed to almost all the issues raised and said some need to be addressed in the short term, such as refining the auction and data publishing. In an emailed statement, the central bank also said it will continue fighting inflation through restrictive monetary policy and building foreign exchange reserves as a way of augmenting the defense of the value of the local currency. Our focus today is current efforts to reshape Zimbabwe's economic policy. I'm Tolulope, Adeleru-Balogun. This is Business Edge. Joining me is Denford Mutashu. He's the president of the Confederation of Zimbabwe Retailers, and we'll get straight into it, starting with the issue that came about on Friday. So on Friday, Zimbabwe's central bank agreed with the business community to increase the demand for the local currency. So Denford, let's start with that. Are there details on how this will be done?
Indeed, the business community met with the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe Governor Dr. Mangudya and the Financial Intelligence Unit. And of course, the business community comprised Confederation of Zimbabwe Retailers, Confederation of Zimbabwe Industries, Zimbabwe National Chamber of Commerce, and of course, other industry bodies. The purpose of the meeting was a follow-up to the 11th of October 2021 business government meeting, which sought to work towards stabilization of the local currency, removing disparities between the formal and informal exchange rate, as well as looking at strengthening the auction system, which has continued to provide the necessary support to the productive sector. And in this case, the manufacturing sector, as well as the retail and wholesale sector. We agreed on the outcomes that include working towards price stabilization across the economy, exchange rate stabilization across the economy, as well as inducing more confidence around the Zimbabwe dollar, which should actually be a currency of choice and make it attractive across the economy. And of course, in doing so, we also sought to look at issues of indiscipline around certain businesses that have also been accessing foreign currency from the auction system and deploying it on other uses other than which they would have procured it for. And we will also work on current challenges around inflation. And so far, you may also remember that we managed to work collectively between government and business to reduce inflation from 837% as of July 2020 to the current 60%.
Yeah. All right, so those are a lot of things that need to be done. Are we seeing things that are put into short-term, medium-term, and long-term plans? And the actuality, the details, and how all of this will be done, are those details out yet?
Yes, we spoke about the details, and of course, some of the issues that are immediate includes the issue for self-introspection and discipline around the business community in their pricing, because the pricing that is bordering around chasing the parallel market exchange rate, which today is sitting at 240 Zimbabwean dollars to $1 US, is opposed to the 112 Zimbabwean dollars to $1, the formal market exchange rate, which comes out weekly, determined by the participation of various bids on the auction system. And of course, the issue of pricing is also tied to the issue of the productive sector, what comes out of the manufacturing sector, because the consequence of lack of production and productivity is that which we see in price spiraling. And of course, one of the immediate issues is to increase the demand for the local currency, which we will collectively do. Remember, government on its side has also been demanding payment of taxes and other essentials in US dollars. And that is also a way of reducing confidence on the local currency. And given the indicative nature of paying of salaries or bonuses and COVID allowances in US dollar is actually seen as a deviation from the work towards strengthening the local currency, and it sends the wrong perceptions to the market. So we will collectively work on reducing the demand and appetite for US dollars and work towards increasing the demand for local currency. And even if it means certain taxes should be paid in local currency, while business is also, has also been urged to ensure that they increase the circulation of the local currency in terms of their transacting.
So I want to talk about businesses, because before this meeting, we heard from the central bank governor, and he really laid the blame for this disparity between the Zimbabwe dollar and the US dollar on businesses that are demanding for dollars in terms of having Zimbabweans pay for services or pay for products, but also because these businesses were also not, they couldn't access the currency through the official channels, so they went to the black market. So that's sort of a catch-22 for the businesses. So he was laying the blame for this disparity that we've seen in recent times on the businesses, but they're just trying to stay in business. And once the central bank cannot provide, they will go to alternative channels. Do you think that the central bank governor really had a case when he came to sort of apportioning blame on this issue to some of the businesses in Zimbabwe?
I think what is critical is that we agreed to move away from the blame game and stick to work on what works for both of us, business and government. And if you may also remember, the background to it is that the auction market closed quite early, around mid-December, and opened quite late, around middle of January. And in between, the business had to continue. And you saw even the run in terms of the parallel market exchange rate could be as a result of more and more demand for the US dollar by business and the general public during the temporary closure of the auction system. But we expect that there's going to be stability that should be derived from now the auction system that is since opened, and the central bank committed to clear all the areas in terms of those successful bids that have since not been met. And that was a commitment that was made by the governor in terms of the immediate, immediate short-term strategy. And in doing so, you remember also that the Reserve Bank is the banker to government, and I think it also advises government. And in that regard, there is need for increased demand for the local currency in terms of government itself, because it makes up about 60% for general economic activities across the economy. So it would actually be prudent that while business is actually encouraged to increase the circulation and acceptability of the local currency, it is a case of working on the confidence. So the key issues, one of them is indiscipline, the second issue is confidence, and of course the third issue is stability. Stabilizing the environment, the economic environment, through inflationary targeted areas, while also increasing the circulation of the local currency and also working towards general acceptance of it and improving confidence. So the issue of confidence is very paramount, and it actually emanates from issues to do with perception. So we need to work on the perception where there is increased insatiable appetite toward the US dollar as opposed to the local currency.
Okay, So do you think this is a policy shift, a change in direction from the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe? Because we've seen some of the comments, we've seen some of the moves that have been made in the past 1-2 years. So do you see the current situation as being a shift in policy? And if you do, why do you think that's coming about now? Because this meeting with the Reserve Bank and, of course, business leaders, it should have been something that should have happened a long time ago, but it's happening now. And I'm very sure many are happy to see the proposals and the solutions on the table. But what do you think is responsible for a shift in direction or policy if you think that's what's going on now?
I think on the macro level, I think we have set out the path that the country is going to take. And that has got to be conjoined with the micro level, and it is those activities that are happening in the economy where, for example, during the festive period, we saw prices of basic goods and other essentials going up, as well as, of course, the economic indicators not being directed or not being as a result of both macro, economic indicators, because this is actually generally speculative in nature, where the parallel market is continued to dictate the pricing across the economy, where, for example, if you look at the retail and the wholesale sector, some suppliers demand payment for goods and services, exclusively in US dollars. And that actually is informed by the nature of the confidence around the local currency. So I think going forward, those are the issues that we basically need to work on together with government. And in terms of policy shift, I don't think it's a policy shift, but it is just increased engagement between government and business, which previously has not been happening as often as we are seeing right now. Because we believe that government concerns should actually be addressed through engaging the business community, because we also have our own concerns as far as the ease of doing business, the general, economic environment that we are in business. And in doing so, it requires an engagement other than enforcement. So I think if there is a policy shift, it is a movement away from more robust enforcement towards engagement and moral suasion, because the moment that we have active enforcement, we have seen that sometimes it generates unintended consequences that are actually quite difficult to deal with in the future.
Okay, so Denford, I want you to hold on. When we come back, I want us to break this down in terms of how this is affecting everyday Zimbabweans. What are the consequences of this currency shortage and the dependency, and of course the use of the dollar versus the Zimbabwean dollar? Then we'll also look at something interesting that's happened, and that's this new land policy that we've been hearing about from the agricultural minister. I'd like to hear what the business community thinks about this and the potential for it to help Zimbabwe's economy. So Denford, please hold on. Today we're looking at reshaping Zimbabwe's economic direction and policy, and we're going to get into an interesting aspect that many have sort of really skipped over, and moving away from some of the Robert Mugabe era land policies. There's a shift. What does it mean for the future of Zimbabwe when we come back? Still with me is Denford Mutashu. He's the president of the Confederation of Zimbabwe Retailers, as we look at reshaping Zimbabwe's economic policy. Now, the inflation rate in the country averaged 82.33% from 2009 until 2021, reaching an all-time high of 837.53% in July of 2020, and a record low of minus 7.50% in December of 2009. The current situation brings back memories of the time of hyperinflation in the country. Analysts say the inflation rate is more than what is being seen now, as most of the economy is informal. Unemployment in the country is 90%, and there's a lack of investment. A rise in global commodity prices, an increase in energy bills, and a weakening of the local currency against the US dollar have been recently cited as inflationary factors. So Denford, let me bring you into this. We can talk about all the numbers, we can use the lingo and everything, but what does all of this translate to for the everyday Zimbabwean who's just trying to make a living, buy food for his family and his business, or even promote her business and move things along? How has this been affecting them?
I think there is a general feeling that the macroeconomic stability should then be linked to the immediate achievables in terms of eradication of poverty, increasing the standards of living for the general public, as well as increasing the income levels, especially for the civil service, and reducing the high level of the informalization, which is continues to increase, currently sitting at above 70% of the economic activities taking place in the study economy. So I think there is now general move forward.
For an ordinary man in the street, I think the feeling is that the macroeconomic instability should lead to reduction of poverty, increasing standards of living, while of course working towards increasing income levels, especially for the civil service. So I think basically those are the issues that we are looking at: access to health, access to education, quality education, and of course access to key basics and necessities across the economy. And increasing job creation, I think that is something that we have seen being captured by government under National Development Strategy 1, as well as under local content policy. So it is actually meant to work with entities like Buy Zimbabwe in order to increase job creation across the economy, and also working towards reducing the inflationary pressures. But I think what we have generally observed is that there is a lot of development that is taking place currently as opposed to the previous, because we have seen in terms of the road network, there's a lot of momentum that is taking place there. So general infrastructure development is one area that has been cited as key to attracting investment and strengthening and protecting local investment as well.
Okay, so let's move away from that. So while this currency situation is ongoing and we're seeing moves now by the Reserve Bank to handle it, there's something else that Zimbabwe is attempting to deal with when it comes to, let's say, maybe ghosts of the economic past. So the country is now urging farm owners with unproductive land to form partnerships in order to improve agricultural outputs and slash the country's import bill. We've heard from the agriculture minister in an emailed statement that said abandoned, derelict, and underutilized farms will be liable for repossession and redistribution to those on the waiting list. What's been the response to this policy from the government now?
I think if you look at the land issue, it has been a thorn for Zimbabwe and Africa in general, dating back to the liberation struggle, and of course after the 1980 independence, there was the willing buyer, willing seller arrangement, which had to do with predominantly white commercial farmers having to willingly dispossess themselves or offer for sale the land that they might be holding on to. So we saw the land redistribution program in the year 2000, and of course the issues that came with it in terms of the methods that were applied. But so far, I think we have moved over from that, and we are targeting agricultural production as has been enunciated under the Pfumvudza program, and we have seen agricultural output shooting. For example, we used to farm wheat that was only enough to feed the country for less than 3 months. But so far, with the increased wheat production that we have seen, it can actually cater for the country's 10 months requirements as opposed to the 3 months way back. And again, the policy shift, as it were, as you have indicated, I think there isn't much of a policy shift. But what we need to seek to do is to increase agricultural output, because we remain an agro-based economy, and a lot of it has got to fit into the manufacturing. Remember back then, 60% of the raw materials used to come out of agriculture fitting into the manufacturing sector. And it is one area that we need to reduce the outflow of foreign currency by domesticating sourcing of raw materials so that we can source them internally, reducing the import bill on importation of grains, and deploying those resources towards other need areas. So I think more to the policy shift, it is actually buttressing the land redistribution program, where government has realized that the people that are holding land has got to produce. If they fail to produce, there is a huge waiting list by Zimbabweans that are also willing to take up the land. They should also be given a chance and an opportunity
to farm and utilize the land that is lying idle. In the absence of that, it is now encouraged that the government, rather the farmers, can actually form partnerships even with local entities and other foreign investors in order for them to make the land productive.
Okay, so it sounds like there's a positive response to it and people are willing to go along with government to see how this makes a difference. So Denford, before we wrap up, just let me give you some quick numbers that will be the basis of my next question, my last question. So Zimbabwe's total public debt is about $11.1 billion. That's about 53.9% of the country's GDP, and 95.6% of that is external. There's $6.4 billion in arrears to international financiers and institutions. The economy contracted, as many did, with the COVID-19 pandemic. And of course, we saw output fall as well because of economic instability. But the country is also intent on doubling spending this year. Zimbabwe is targeting 5.5% in growth for 2022, also projecting a budget deficit of 1.5% of the GDP this year. So with some of the currency challenges, with a redistribution of land initiative, let's call that, or a new direction that's taking, how do you think the country will accomplish what it wants to align with the budget deficit and with spending with the current issues that Zimbabwe is facing? Let's make this very quick.
I think it is the quality of the spending, because the spending is actually largely not consumptive. The spending is directed towards the productive sector and also infrastructure development. So in that line, I think we will actually be poised to go back to the glory days as Zimbabwe, because so far we have seen that the pillars, the growth drivers, that includes mining, agriculture, the manufacturing sector, and recently tourism, those are actually firing. And actually, if we work together to enable the environment and remove the inconsistencies and improve the ease of doing business, I definitely think that given the way the agricultural sector is performing right now, and even the mining sector, including the artisanal miners, look at the gold output. The huge contribution is coming from the artisanal miners. So what it means is that we need now to deploy more resources towards improving the quality of that, the performance of those sectors, so that they can actually contribute further into the gross domestic product. But further to that, we will actually be working towards eradicating the currency instability and also the exchange rate disparities that have also continued to slow down the economic growth, while of course continuing with the COVID-19 pandemic fight.
All right. And we'll leave it at that for now. We'll be watching to see how this plays out. A lot of proposals on the table with the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe and business leaders. Now it's time to see them put into play and see how it helps the economy in the coming days and months. Thank you so much, Denford Mutashu. We'll see you again soon.
Thank you. The pleasure is mine. Good day.
And Zimbabwe could be a dark horse in this game. With some determination, things could turn around for one of the continent's most economically troubled countries. From years of hyperinflation from 2008 to 2009, when it hit in the sextillion percent of inflation, Zimbabwe has been battling to bring things down. COVID-19 did put a break on that, but with determination and the right moves, things could be different in 2022. You're watching Business Edge. Up next is NC4 to watch. And up next now, we have a few stories we're keeping our eyes on. And we start with the International Monetary Fund presenting an updated macroeconomic framework to all of Chad's creditors by the end of January. This comes amid pressure for creditors to finalize a debt restructuring plan with the country. The global lender on Tuesday said that public and private creditors need to finance a debt restructuring plan with Chad by the end of March to restore durable economic growth amid worsening conditions in the country. No rain and a dry wind last week in most of Ivory Coast's cocoa growing regions raised concerns for the quality and development of the April to September mid-crop. Ivory Coast, which is the world's top cocoa producer, is in its dry season, which runs from mid-November to March, when downpours are scarce. Nigeria's Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, Zainab Ahmed, has said the government has suspended plans to remove fuel subsidy. She said the government made provisions for subsidy in the 2022 budget from January to June this year, adding that government will forward a request to the National Assembly to make additional provisions for fuel subsidy from July this year to a time deemed appropriate for its eventual removal. According to her, all payments on fuel subsidy ordinarily would cease as from July 2022. And finally, oil prices bounced back on Tuesday, recovering some of the previous day's losses as growing tension in Eastern Europe and the Middle East fueled concerns over possible supply disruptions. Brent crude futures rose to $86.87 a barrel, reversing a 1.8% fall in the previous session. WTI crude futures climbed to $83.76 a barrel, having slid 2.2% on Monday. Oil prices reached 7-year highs last week, bolstered by tight worldwide supply and resurgent global demand. And that's NC4 to watch. Thank you as always for joining me on Business Edge. We'll have more conversations on African finance, business, and the economy right here at 11 a.m. West African time, Monday through Friday. I'm Tolulope. Adeleru-Balogun. Have a pleasant day.